Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We're getting close to, NFL, what is it? Wild card weekend. Or I think they call it that but yeah, I know. Well, Russ, so yeah, you can't celebrate that because your team hasn't been in the playoffs in what, 10 years?
It's 10 years now. Yep.
It's like the Buffalo Sabres celebrating playoffs, which never happens, anyway, or the Maple Leafs celebrating playoff victories, which never happens. But go ahead start with the pre-show.
I'll be celebrating hockey in Michigan and Kevin State again for the second time this year. Anyhow, let's talk about phone companies, the mobile companies. Now, I don't know if they all do this, but I'm going to just talk about T-Mobile. And well, actually, I know two of them do this. So I'll talk about in general. And if yours doesn't do it, hey, great. But recently, I've had to get phones either upgraded, switched, or whatever for some older folks. But also just in general now, I've noticed that if I want to go in and go to a dealer and say, I want to get my phone upgraded, they really only have stock of the most expensive, latest and greatest. And I'm not the most expensive guy. I always buy like one or two down, whatever. So you end up having to do that online. So what happens now online is they just ship you the phone. If it's an iPhone, they ship you the tool. They want you to do the SIM card. They want you to do all of that. And so, but here's the thing. So like I'm trying to switch over a phone and one of them's to an iPhone 13 for somebody. And I pull out the SIM card tray on that and it's empty. And so then when I call, they're like, oh yeah, there's an eSIM card in that. And I'm like, oh, that's something new. Well, how do you expect people at home to do this? And it's really amazing too, because even when I was just really reverting back to the other phone because that phone turned out to be too complicated for someone. So while I was reverting back to the other phone and having to put the SIM card in that and they wanted to see it, they're like, okay, so, are you good? And I'm like, no, I'm still struggling to get the SIM card in because it's this little SIM card on this little tray. I should have had tweezers with me. If I had tweezers, I could have done the job. And this is where we've come now. It's like we're doing the tech work for them. Well, and that's garbage. And I don't like it. I don't like the way that's going.
Mine was a similar because I'm also T-Mobile and I went into a T-Mobile location a couple days ago and you would think that most people would say, if my bill drops $25, I'm just happy as a clam that it dropped. Me, I'm happy, but I want to know why it dropped. If they switched me to a different plan or something, because Russ, if they switch me to a plan because I go up to Canada all the time and I'm on like Canadian,
oh, okay, that's fair.
I get really screwed. One time I went up there and I was on a plan and I got $115 extra bill.
Yeah, I'm $1 a minute for Canada because most people just text me. I get it.
So and what it was, even though I had gone in like 6 months ago to say, because any new phone you buy, it's on like an installment payment, either as a lease or as a buy. And I wanted to buy it because I keep my phones. I don't like them being out there because all my information online could be on there. I don't want anybody having it. I've got my phones going back to 2001. I should take a picture of them.
Imagine if they unlock the information that Michael Agello has. I just can't imagine how valuable that is on the open market, Kev.
My rumors, all my takes for us, but it was basically the rent on my phone finally expired.
It dropped off. Yeah,
so it dropped off. But I'm somebody who, like, when the new Samsung S22 Ultra comes out supposedly next month, I'm gonna get it because I need an up-to-date phone. But it's $1,200. I mean, it's ridiculous, Kev.
That's why I don't buy the top one. I never did.
But okay, this was the thing I was going to bring up, and then I'll shut up. My phone is 2 years old. The case on my phone broke, so I needed a new case. I had one of those
OtterBox, yeah.
OtterBox. So it broke. It protected the phone, which is its job, but you needed a new case. I could not find a case anywhere for a Note 10 because it's 2 years old. I had to
you got to go online for that.
I had to go online and buy an Amazon, buy one and they're all marked down because it's a 2-year-old phone. So I got this plastic thing for $4, Kev.
Yeah.
But once it's not brand new, you're screwed.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the way people are now on their phones. They really want to upgrade them all the time. And, it's kind of like the cars of the 60s and 70s when people always traded their cars in every year to get the newest model. And now people do that with phones. I'm just not was never like that with cars. And I'm certainly not like that with phones.
All right. So what model phone do you have, Kev?
I have no idea. Like, I have an iPhone, but I don't know what generation.
You don't know what number.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, when I go get a new phone, when my kids tell me. Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, my kids say, "Dad, you got it. You're about 7 generations behind. You got to go get a new phone." And then I go, because they know all about it, and or they tell me, that one's so cracked, Dad. It's time to get a new phone.
Right.
So,
when they're embarrassed by you.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Whenever they're embarrassed by me.
When you're using the flip phone, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not that bad because I like the photo function. I have grandkids, and so those things are kind of important. But I'm just really not up on it the way some people are. But I respect what they can do now, and I like all the functions of them.
You can do movies on some. It's insane.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a documentarian, and he has shot an entire documentary on an iPhone.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So I've stuck to the Android phone. It's all a question of taste, and it's all a question of what you're used to. I mean, I have Apple computers. I have an iMac. I have a MacBook Pro, but I like the Android better than I like the iPhone. I played around with the iPhone. Somebody else had one, and I tried it. I just like the functions of the Android better. So, anyway, all right,
I've met people who prefer the Android to the iPhone, and I get it. It's just like you get comfortable with certain items in your life that you like, and you don't like to change. I'm a pretty loyal guy. I've mentioned before, like my wife and I have had the same car garage for 25 years. They've been fixing our cars. I had the same doctor until he retired. I had the same dentist for 25 years until he retired.
Everybody's retiring on you, Kev.
Now the cheesesteak place, Kev, that you went to, that seemed like you probably been going there for a while.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. But I've been going. There's a hamburger place that I took Eck to when he and his son came by, and I have literally been going to that for 60 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, because I remember going there when I was 5, and that's been around forever.
You just hope they've changed the grease since then.
Yeah. Although there is a place that trumpets the fact. I think it's in Tennessee. I want to say Memphis. I could be wrong on that, but they've had the same grease from the 1920s, and when they had to move locations, they actually had a parade where they moved the
parade.
Yeah. They moved the vat.
Wow.
Of grease. So, I mean, I bet we could find that online, but
I'm not looking for it. I don't want to know.
100-year-old grease. There you go. It's like fine wine. One last thing before we start the show. Okay, I will eliminate the Patriots-Bills game because I have a vested interest. But is there one football game that you will zero in on this weekend that you will want to watch, Russ? Are you completely?
It's funny. I'm looking up the schedule now because other than the Eagles, Tampa, I can tell you about only because of my dad, and you and the stupid Bills, who I am going to have to root for the Bills this week, which would make me sick. I mean, maybe the Steelers Chiefs. I'm going to be staying over in Pittsburgh on my way to Detroit. So maybe Steelers Chiefs. I'll root for the Chiefs and watch Roethlisberger leave the NFL forever. That's fine by me.
Yeah, I'm interested in the Steelers game. I've got friends in Pittsburgh, and I've always been kind of fascinated by the Steelers. I wouldn't say that I've rooted for them because I like them as much as I've just been fascinated by.
Yeah, no, I've been that same way.
Yeah. So I'm interested in that, and I'm going to root for Mike's Bills because not only because Mike's a fan of them, but also I've always felt like the Buffalo fans have gotten screwed through the years. Like they're loyal, good fans. They really care about their teams, and they've just had terrible luck.
Yeah.
Make no mistake. If they beat the Patriots, I stop rooting for the Bills and I root for the next team. Yeah, it's one evil versus another evil for me.
Yeah, it's the Iran-Iraq war, or it's the Russians versus Germans.
I've talked to people about, like I just don't think like you guys. I don't really hate teams, but
I hate teams. I
know you do, yeah. Which I just can't even imagine. But anyway, I've talked about it to people, and everybody says they don't say it as strongly as you do, but they say because when I was a kid, they were always beating my team, so like I never want that team to win. But that's a little bit different from. I mean, you express real vitriol. I do. I do. Hate and like.
It makes me feel better when I do.
I mean, it's like a running joke. People say, I root for Michigan and everybody who plays Ohio State. That's kind of a joke, but you take it seriously. I mean, that's the way you view things. So
I wish zero success for Bill Belichick for the rest of his career. Trust me.
Yeah, I would.
It doesn't matter what I think because he's had it anyhow. So
I would root for the devil over the Montreal Canadiens. But no,
but you have so many. If I had to, if as many things as bother you bothered me, I'd actually have to get a notebook and carry them write them down. I really would. I could not keep track of all the things that bother you. Like,
the game that I will check in on and be interested in is the one that hasn't been mentioned yet, which is 49ers Cowboys, because I know a few people who are Cowboys fans, like Pierre LeBrun, like Chris Johnston, who I run into all the time up in Toronto, and they're really rabid Cowboys fans. And there's an expectation here about the Cowboys, but 49ers, I mean, they can run the ball. They can play defense well. Garoppolo has played well, even though he's hurt. They could lose that. And Jerry Jones is such a reactionary owner. He could really do something stupid like, fire a head coach or so, I mean, I will be curious to see how that game turns out.
My wife and I will have a rooting interest for a team during the postseason. My wife more so than me, but she's been really all about Matthew Stafford. She's hoping for success from him. He was part of the miserable Lions experience here and really never had a team that was worthy of going far in the playoffs. And he's a pretty good quarterback. So I think both her and I are interested in, some success for him.
Of course. Russ is pointing out. I got myself a brand new water container, one of these Yeti ones and of course it's got the top attachment, which will let you drink, and then it takes the entire thing off. And as I'm looking and listening to you, Kevin, I'm taking it off, and I almost poured half of it onto my head. So I'm well hydrated thanks to my new Yeti. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, January 14th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohn from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen from HockeyBuzz.
And I'm a rather wet Michael Agello, and this is HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with this. We're not going to talk specifically about each individual All-Star selection, but the All-Star game, the All-Star participants were announced yesterday on ESPN. Russ was very strategic in pointing out that Austin Matthews was interviewed by ESPN while he was at a golf course in Scottsdale, Arizona, which Russ, of course, said, how perfect, because that's when the leaves end up. But he was selected as the captain of the Atlantic Division. I'll just say this. I don't like the setup now where it's division versus division, because I think it lends itself to players not being picked. I mean, you look at the setup, and I'm just looking at the Atlantic. They took one player from every team except Toronto and Tampa, and Toronto was the two teams with the goaltender. So I think there's a group of like 3 or 4 players, Kev, that from that group, from that Atlantic Division group, that I think deserve to be in there, that aren't going to be in there. So I don't know if I don't like the setup.
Well, I don't know if you're allowed to actually have an opinion, since you don't really.
I agree. Thank you.
So, but I the point you're making is a valid one. In their effort to try to make it more entertaining, which is I don't understand why you even bother to do that. Like, just accept the All-Star game is what it is, and do the best you can and get the as many good players as you can on the ice, because that's what if you go to an all-star game, you want star power. That's what you really want. So whatever you got to do to achieve that, you should do. And I don't know if this format is the exact best way to do that, because I think
it isn't. But you know what it does? It allows for more marketing, Kev, because they do have more players from every team. They have all these separate strategic captains. So it is a lot about marketing, and I get that. One person I was really happy for was Thatcher Demko, and I know his family a bit. And so I texted his mom, and she was thrilled. And Thatcher's wife was thrilled. And so like, just to combat all of the people that think it's not that big a deal, when you're a young guy like that and you're trying to prove yourself in the league and you make it to the all-star team, it's a big deal still.
Well, it's big for the players. Like, this is a kind of event where they can include their families. Like, like the playoffs, unless you win the cup and you bring your family on the ice, your family isn't really part of the playoff experience. In fact, the coaches go out of their way to isolate you from your family.
Absolutely, they do.
They put you in hotels, and they talk about not being distracted by trying to come up with 43 tickets to make sure your high school can go to the game. So it's not all that fun. From All-Star game, it becomes a real family affair. Like, you see a lot of kids in the dressing room. They're hanging out with their favorite players. Every year, there's always somebody whose kid's favorite player is not their dad, but someone else who's in the All-Star. That's always one of the stories that goes on. But so it's a real big event. Like, writers complain about it because it isn't all that competitive. But I've said for many years, it's really just the NHL's annual convention. Everybody gets together. The media members get to talk to 30 different players. I mean,
we will talk about who's fastest and who has the hardest shot. We all talk about that.
Yeah. Those are the two skills contests that we can sort of identify with, because we all get into speed and numbers. We can quantify that.
I'll tell you what they really should do with that, though. They should go back and let these guys do it with wooden sticks, not composite, so that we can match them up against guys from the past and see who really shot faster. Because, Ally Afraidy never had a composite stick. A lot of these guys didn't, and they may have shot harder than today's guys.
Al McInnes didn't.
Well, that would be fun. Or bring, there's a guy over in Russia that just shattered the existing record. And it would be fun if you could convince the KHL to bring that guy over.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, just
a big crown, right? And you have to say, you put him in the thing.
It would have to be a belt. It would have to be a belt.
A belt, a belt is better. Yeah,
a belt would be better. But yeah, I mean, like, that would be fun, because the hardest shot is something like that's been talked about for years. Like, even pre-radar gun, they brought mathematicians in to figure out the speed of Bobby Hull. Bobby Hull's wrist shot, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was figured or determined to be 115 miles an hour. Or a slap shot, that's what it was. And Gordie Howe's wrist shot was over 110 miles per hour. Now,
it's laughable to look back at how they tried to do that stuff. The famous Bob Feller throwing a fastball while the guy is going by on a motorcycle, and him beating the guy on the motorcycle.
But they did have the early jugs gun. So as an example, I'll tell you one that I think is held up, Kev. Bobby Hull could skate at a speed of 29.7 miles per hour. Right. They knew that. And actually, that number now is as high as Connor McDavid. Like, McDavid doesn't hit that all the time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And to be honest with you, the early shot determinations was all velocity physics math.
Right.
And I'm sure it was, relatively close. Or
they used slide rules to get back from the moon. So Correct. If they could do that, it had to be somewhat accurate.
Watch the movie
guys with pencil holders. I mean, we all remember slide rules. Like, I'm an old guy. Like, I had slide rules.
Of course we did. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say this: at a Buffalo Bison's game, maybe 20 years ago, when I could actually throw, They had the speed gun, and they had, I threw, 3 fastballs, and I know that I throw faster than 48 miles an hour. So it was bull.
You know what, though? You don't. I'm going to tell you, this is funny.
Don't either, yeah.
You don't. Back when
I'm sorry. Tim, who's the Tim Wakefield's knuckleball is not fast.
No. But listen, this is true. I can go back and tell you that, like, when I was 18 or 19, I was a great adventure, and I threw 68. That was the hardest I could throw, and that really was the hardest I could throw, because years later, I was at the Hall of Fame with my wife and a good friend, and my wife threw faster than my good friend. And he was like, there's no way that this is right. And I'm like, it is right. She has a really good arm. And everybody thinks they could throw faster than what they do, because what players could actually do is incredible.
Yeah, given some practice, you would probably throw in the 50s. You were going from a standstill. You hadn't thrown before.
Warmed up.
All that. So, you given some time or a week to practice everything, you might have been 55.
Yeah,
right. 56,
I know the Hockey Hall of Fame is closed right now, but they used to, and I don't know if they still have this, but they used to have where you could get into an NHL size goal, and they would shoot
the foam pucks.
The foam pucks.
They did have them as of 3 or 4 years ago. I know that.
And they said the foam pucks were going the speed of an NHL.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Oh, I stopped all of them. If that's the case, then I should replace Jack Campbell in the All-Star game.
Mike, you would pull a hamstring in practice.
Yeah.
I'd be like Mike Palmateer at old-timers game.
I remember, I don't know whether they still have them because this has been a long time ago, but Cooperstown used to have real pitching machines where you
they don't have them anymore.
Batch when you could bet against 85-mile-an-hour sliders and kind of things, and I love those.
Those were great.
We had a great time. So,
Kev, I used to love those, and I told Russ this story, and of course he burst out in hilarious laughter. I went to a place where they had one machine that was supposedly major league speed, and I'm like, okay, I'll go in there just to whiff at it. But I was a little fearful I was going to get hit, and my friend who was in there before, it's blowing by him at 95, but it's going right down the middle. Me, I go in there, first pitch, I'm standing, with about a foot and a half away from the plate, and it hits me right on the left thigh. It's like, I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Is Bob Gibson going?
It's because you crowded the plate. That's why.
I was 18 inches away, Russ. I was
you weren't.
I'll tell you, I was in charge of an athletic association here for many years where I lived, and I was and I took people kicking and screaming. We used to have coach pitch for that. I guess must be 8 and 9 year olds. I can't think. Was it? No, maybe it's 7 and 8. Yeah, 7 and 8 was coach pitch, and I went to pitching machines because our coaches kept hitting the players all the time. All the time.
Wow.
And our kids were developing an unhealthy fear of
interesting.
Of the baseball. So I argued that, and I had gotten this from talking with folks at the national level, that what happens in these leagues where they go with pitching machines, because the pitching is very consistent and it's over the plate. Yeah. And kids end up learning to be first ball, fastball hitters because they go up swinging.
True.
They go up, the ball's going to be around the plate. They know it is, and they go up. And, we had success for it. Now, I left shortly after we got them, so I don't know.
Yeah, but then once the kids hit like 12 or 13 and there's a kid throwing curveballs, then they're screwed.
Yeah, the curveballs. But, I remember in Little League, they used to, back before there were any rules, I played in the Paleozoic era. Like we had like a 12-year-old knuckleball pitcher named Bobby Eves who, came in, and I was a catcher. And so I would, catch the knuckleball or chase it back to the backstop, depending on how we reviewed it.
We didn't have a knuckleball. We did have a guy who threw a big curve, though. Probably in the Little League World Series, like we were in my local branch. If we got out of that one, we'd have gone further. And that guy was a really good athlete, but he didn't pitch more than a year or two after. He probably ruined his arm.
Well, The big pitch back in the 1960s that everybody talked about was back then it was called an in-shoot, which was a screwball. Screwball.
Carl
But back
Hubble with the screwball.
Yeah, but it was called an in-shoot back in Michigan, at least in that term. And
well, you guys have your own language in Michigan, so you know.
Yeah, well, we kind of do. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was Carl Hubble who in an All-Star game struck out like, Ruth Gehrig, Jimmy Five. It was like five guys in a row. There's a picture of him, let's just like standing on the mound, and his arm is basically curved because he threw so many screwballs that he affected his arm, which is bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, Christy Mathewson threw the fadeaway, which is probably the equivalent of a split finger that the kind that either goes away or goes into the plate. And he did that back in the 20s, and he got everybody out.
I love those. I wish there were as many hockey stories like, say, Three Finger Brown, who lost a couple fingers in like a combine or something like that. But
there's One-Eye Joe Malone.
Right, but what I'm saying is the stub of his finger allowed him to throw a curveball, so with extra spin, and that was the reason for his success.
Sometimes it was a wartime effect, and those guys could come back and play, and that's why it happened to them too.
It's interesting too that when I was growing up, there was a romance with the ideas of guys throwing spitballs and getting moisture on the ball, and now we treat them like criminals.
That's true.
In the 60s, I mean, it was talked all the time. Like, you'd be on the sand lot, and the kid would turn around and spit on the ball.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then he would pitch it to you, and the ball would never move whatsoever.
Gaylord Perry would be akin to Barry Bonds and Clemens because he put grease on the ball.
Yeah. And it was so, it was an art. But
he started faking it after a while. He didn't even do it. He didn't even do it anymore.
Yeah,
no, it was psychological after.
But I do remember the guys were almost magicians. Like Mike Cuellar, like he went up there, like he just threw such junk, like that ball would just like float over,
in the '69 series, Cuellar was almost unhittable. I mean, he was great. That whole staff with all the 20-game winners.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't want to, at the risk of turning this into a baseball show.
Well, Corinne says we already did, so.
Sorry.
Oh, they did? Yeah. Well, we'll get back to hockey, but just one more point. You were talking about a guy who's unhittable. I think the one season where I thought, and it was an athlete that I thought was nearly invincible, was the year that Vita Blue went like 25-4 or 24-5, something like that. And what I remember about that, they played a doubleheader against the Tigers, and the Tigers had Mickey Lolich with his rubber arm, and he struck out about $4.5 million that season, and he just had a lot of strikeouts. And rather than throw Lolich against Blue in the first half of the doubleheader, they split them. They threw a sacrificial lamb against Vita Blue, and then let Lolich pitch the second game with the hope of getting a split. That's how dominant Vita Blue was that season. So anyway, let's go back to hockey. I apologize. We got.
We'll just briefly touch on this, but they did announce the roster for Team USA for the Olympics. I know the Czechs announced theirs a couple days ago. Canada hasn't done it yet. There was somebody put out a fake one today, which was ridiculous, and a former player got suckered in on a fake tweet, which is ridiculous. But Kev, as you had mentioned, and I think Chris Peters, who we had on our Off the Post podcast last week, mentioned it was a very heavy college roster, 15 NCAA players, a bunch of players from playing in Europe. No Bobby Ryan, which was a little surprising. But what did you think of the makeup of Team USA?
Well, I mean, I think they've done the best they can given the circumstances. You look, they got 3 players from the KHL, I think. O'Neill was on that, and Agostino, and Ely. And all of them are among the leading scorers in the KHL. So, I think they'll score. The big question will be in goal. Will it be good enough? I have no idea. Russ,
I can give you a little bit on the goaltenders. Yeah.
What would tell me what you think?
So here's what I think.
Tell guys, and they didn't even know. So
it's interesting that Pat Nagel, who's been playing for the Phantoms this year, is on there. He's pretty much the chaperone. He's been really good in the AHL, but he's a 34-year-old guy. So right. He's the chaperone for everybody else. That's obvious. Drew Commesso is really good, but is he great? Is he Mike Richter good? No, I don't think so. But if the defense is good in front of him, he doesn't give up too many rebounds, and he is a bigger goalie who has some confidence. So he's good. Strauss-Mann's been great overseas in this SHL. He was with Michigan. He is a solid goalie. He's older than Commesso. So it'll be between those two. But Comesso's probably the guy they're looking at first because he was the guy they were looking at for the World Juniors. And I watched him in camp, and I do think there's been improvement in him in the last year. I'll tell you the two things about this team. The defense is really good. They did have some favorites. Like I think they played a favorite with Nick Perbix, but that's okay. When you have Minnesota State guys in there and you have coaches from there, we all know that's going to happen every time. But it's not like he's a bad player. He's a good player. Offensively, they have speed, but they have some guys who can't finish. I love Kenny Agostino. I watched him since Yale. He can't finish. The minute you get to the NHL level, he can't finish. I would have put in Bobby Ryan instead of Agostino as an example because in a tournament like this, Ryan is still fast enough, but he can finish. They don't have many proven goal scorers on this team. They've got 2 or 3 that we could look at. You know, they've got Beniers. Matthew Nyes is good around the net. Abersees has been scoring. And then they got a lot of burners. You know, Sean Farrell's super fast. Brendan Brisson's probably a 4th-line center on this team. Pat Brisson's kid, but he's really good. And he's fast. So they really
He's 19 years old. So
yeah, they focused on the speed, but when they play the Russians, Kev, they're going to have a problem because the Russians are going to have 6 to 7 probably ex-NHLers.
When I needed 20 minutes later, I picked a quality plant for less than $20 a month.
I'm not sure what that is, but I think it's
Mike. Is this what do you want? A dating app?
That wasn't me.
No, that was me. I was trying to look up the scores because I thought Agostino. You were saying he couldn't finish. I thought he's among
the NHL level. At the NHL level.
Well, there won't be any NHL players there. I don't know if you.
No, I know, but they're playing NHL ice. In KHL, they're not.
Yeah. Well, so that's a good point, but. Yeah. The Russian team will be players that Agostino's playing against all season. So
That's true, but they're still going to have some sharks on the Russian team. They're going to have even the Czech team has some former NHLers that you wish this team had a couple.
Right. Krejci and Frolik are going to be on the Czechs. I'm assuming, Voyanov and maybe Pavel Datsuk, if he's 44 or 45 years old. I don't know for sure. They haven't named their team yet, but there will be some Shipachyov will probably be on there, Russ. I mean, so there will be some NHL level players in the KHL.
He's the leading scorer in the KHL this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Russia's going to be Russia's the favorite, I'm sure.
Here's Russ's point is a valid one for this reason. Just going back to 2018 when we had a similar tournament, U.S. had the same kind of team, and it ended up being the college players who were the better players, even though they had some players on that team who were quite successful in the European leagues. But Troy Terry and Donato ended up being, the key players on that team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious to see what the makeup of the Canadians are. I mean, I've heard, Eric Stahl signed an AHL contract, presumably to get some work in before. So it sounds like he's going to be part of it. And then
Devin Dubnyk will be their goalie. We know that.
Dubnyk will be the goalie, and I've heard guys like Josh Hosang, because he's on an AHL contract, might be part of it. But it'll be interesting to see. We saw the Owen Power and Kent Johnson will be on that team. So let's say this: I will watch it. I was fully for the NHL not going to the Olympics for many reasons. And after all the cancellations started and now up to 100 games, they have to make up those games. And there was no way they would be able to make them up if they had gone to the Olympics. So this will be an interesting tournament. And I checked in 4 years ago and I'll watch it now, but it's not, and it's not the same as if the NHL players would have gone there. But
no, but they had a hard time putting these teams together, as Kevin said. So that's why I'm never going to be too hard on them, because it was a monumental task to get all the NHLers off your team because you can't have them and get a whole bunch of new players. Like, that's hard.
Yes.
Yeah, and they won't have played together for any period.
No. I mean, some will. There's some of the college guys have. They've been in the U.S. program. So, like, Drew Hellison knows Matty Bernier. So there's some continuity, but not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, some of those players were playing in the World Junior, so it's like it's like
Yes.
a month off from that. But switching to some of the games last night, we'll start with the game between the Bruins and the Flyers, and that game marked the return of Tuukka Rask to the NHL. Rask got the win. It was a 3-2 win for the Bruins. The Bruins were up 3-0, and then Russ, I hate to say it, but the turning point in that game was the Zach McEwen fight, because after that happened, the Flyers got into the game.
I mean, maybe not, but I'll give him a little credit for that. But the thing that cost the Flyers, there were three things that cost them. It was dumb penalties. It was bad special teams for the most part, even though they did get a power play goal. Later on, they had a 5-on-3. And I at least give Mike Yeo credit. He did something Vigneault would never do. He put out the 5 forwards. It still didn't work. And the other thing that I noticed, and this is something for a lot of teams to take notice to, the penalty killers on Boston were a little bit stronger on the puck than the offensive players from the Flyers. So in other words, they would lose the puck battle a little bit, and just the wrist work on a lot of the Bruins guys that were killing them were able to whip it around the boards much quicker than the Flyers guys could stop it or get to it. And so there was a lot of disruption with that. And it was really hard, especially later in the game, for the Flyers to set up. Now, with the extra guy on the ice, it was different because the Flyers did dominate like the last 3 minutes and change, and Rask really came through then because he wasn't tested early. But this was another game where it showed you Philly's not good enough.
Yeah. And Pasternak was, he's had some. He's not performed as well as normally Pasternak has, and I was wrong. I thought they were up 3-0. They were up 2-0. Philly came back
2-0, and then they fought back.
Right, yeah. They tied it up 2-2, and then Pasternak scored the hat-trick goal to get the win. So, but that team right now, they're absolutely red hot, Kev.
Yeah, for sure. And the return of Rask is big for this reason. I found it fascinating. Players say all the time, I understand that this is a business and everything. But they were essentially, according to Bruce Cassidy, he didn't use these words, but the Bruins were like little kids when Rask came back to the team. He said, there's a buzz here, there's an excitement level. And, all the reporters made note of how everyone was excited to have Rask back. He's a very popular player, very likable guy. I've interviewed him many times, as Russ has, I'm sure.
Yep.
He's just one of those guys that everyone likes being around. So, maybe their goaltending was good enough, would have been good enough, but Rask, it's different. This is he's their guy. And even though the fans have had kind of a strange love-hate relationship with Rask, which I've never really understood because I think he's pretty consistent. But anyway, the players really like him. And I think this sort of brings the team kind of all together and, gets them ready for making a run. I mean, they were a really good team for the last few years. And
there's one little thing with the Bruins, though, Kev. When they have everybody deep and pushing up front, defensemen included, trying to score goals and everything, the Flyers did get 2 or 3 breaks. Atkinson and Farabee did have a great goal, but they were able to get one-on-0s out of that. And that's something the Bruins never used to give up. So that is their little bit of a problem for them because they don't have the same rock-solid defense they used to. Now,
a surprising score, the Blue Jackets, who, I think people thought the Blue Jackets were not going to be good this year, but Merzlikins is having a good year. They beat the Hurricanes 6-0 last night. And the reason I bring this up is the comments of Rod Brindamore after the game. And Russ, they sound very similar to what Sheldon Keefe said after the Leafs lost to Arizona. I'll quote this: "I got to take the blame for the loss. I should have done something differently. All these practice days and days off, I should have come up with something just to be sharper. We saw it coming. It was bad. It was bad, bad, bad." Keefe is basically, he said the same thing. He says, our conditioning was off. We had all these days off, and he didn't say this, but you had 15 players coming back from COVID. They played a couple games in front
of
hard. No fans. Now they're on a 6-game road trip because Toronto can't play at home because apparently a home date earns $3.5 million in revenue. So they're not going to play home games until they can get fans back in the seats.
Here's something that I noticed because I'm at most of the Flyers games and I see Claude Giroux a lot. He came back from COVID, right? And he wasn't even a factor until the middle of the third period. Then I started to see him sort of have his legs under him. His shot was there and everything. If you've got 6 or 7 guys at one time with a team that are all of a sudden going through that same thing, you're going to have these tanks of a game. But I did want to say to Kevin, maybe I wasn't too hard on LaFontaine because he gave up a goal on 3 shots.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Yeah. I don't think he's the first goalie making his NHL debut that had a little bit of trouble, though. So.
No, I know. I'm not saying it for that. I know.
They should have brought back.
I like the guy. I do like him.
They should have brought back our Facebook friend David Ayers, Russ. Come on. They dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah.
No, Kev, I don't know if you've heard anything because I heard something, I think it was from Elliot Friedman a couple days ago, that the NHL teams had been sent sort of a provisional schedule, redoing all the postponed games that hasn't been released yet. And, we're getting to right now it's January 14th. So we're like 2.5 weeks away from what would be the beginning of the Olympic break after the All-Star game. And we don't know when these teams are playing, where they're playing, how many games they're playing. I would have thought that would have been out by now.
Well, the problem with that is that, games are still getting canceled. And
right.
So I think they're going to try to push that as late as they can because of that. But, we've got a problem here that goes beyond what I think we can fix through the 3-week break, So, we're going to be dealing with this, for a very long time. And, I thought the other day, imagine if this goes on in the playoffs where, you're playing a game 7 and you lose your goalie and your number one center.
It's going to be rough.
Yeah. So, because even 5 days, in a playoff scenario, 5 days can be 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
And the issue is with regard to conditioning. How many players have told us through the years when they don't skate for 1 day during the regular season, they feel off? I've probably heard that 5,000 times during my career.
And what's funny? We know that some of the players, when they were quarantined, would get a bike sent to them or something, and clearly it's still not enough.
No. So that's the case. Speaking of that, before we forget, and X's not here to kind of talk about this because he is the king of the rumors. But if you go to Cap Friendly, and I advise everyone to do this, to look and see where everyone's cap position is. If you go and look at the top teams in the league in terms of teams that we all consider contenders, there's no money left.
Right.
And I ended up talking to a GM about this. And he said, that's the one thing that's really been underreported. And he goes, it's what I've been talking about with other general managers. If you look at several of the teams who are people are saying are going to make moves, he said they have to remove somebody from their roster. Right. And he goes, now in my case, I won't say who the GM is. He said, I don't have anybody I want to take off my roster. Right. I actually like all my guys.
Right.
So, he said, even though I'm rumored to be involved in a lot of trades, he said, I'm not likely to make a deal.
Right.
I saw that the Tampa Bay Lightning, Brisebois told The Athletic, I'm not likely to make a deal.
Right. Yeah, and he's being honest this time. He is.
Yeah, and and I keep thinking they're going to go out and get someone, because there's a couple defensemen out there that I wouldn't, if I was him, I wouldn't mind losing. But it's really going to be hard, and I wonder, could we have fewer deals than we think we're going to have?
Well, I mean, I keep talking about Arizona, and Arizona's a tire fire. But if you look at their roster, they have a bunch of UFAs, and everybody's assuming
they're making deals, no question.
They're making deals, but here's the complicating factor here, Russ. They have one spot where they can retain salary. So you've got like Phil Kessel, who's at $6.8 million. They can retain 50% on him to make the deal palatable, or to be able to some other team to fit him on under their cap. Yeah. But then that's it. They can't. So their deals after retaining one salary on one player, their deals are going to have to be money in, money out. So like, say for example, they trade Lawson Krause to Boston or Lawson Krause to Toronto. Then Boston's going to have to trade Jake DeBrusk back to open up space.
Yeah, it's going to complicate things. This does leave the door open for some three-team trades, so they can wash some of those contracts.
I've heard there's only 2 teams willing to take contracts because that's money that has to be paid. So that would be Detroit and Arizona. So
No, I think that's probably true too. I could see it. But again, here's what I wonder, Kev, and I'm just going to use them as an example, not like I thoroughly believe today they're going to be, a cup champion. But does that give teams who have cap space, like the Rangers, who have a decent amount of talent, an edge on some of these teams that are up there because they can make moves?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the 2 teams that I've looked at, the Rangers have about $4 million, which you can do a lot with $4 million.
You can.
That puts them in a position if they want to get Sherratt, for example, and strengthen their defense. It allows them to go out, maybe be in the hurdle sweepstakes if they want to do that. So there's a lot they can do. The other team that's intriguing to me is Nashville. And I wrote about this yesterday. I personally, even though I spelled out the possibility of trading Peter Forsberg, I don't see that happening. I would think they would keep him if we're talking about the lack of cap space out there, and about the fact that the general managers are saying that it's going to be a lot harder to make trades this year than people thought because there's only 2 teams that really have any money.
I'll give just looking at that list, Pat. Looking at the cap.
Go ahead.
Yeah, looking at the cap friendly list, a team that is right now. I mean, they're not a Stanley Cup contender because nobody expected them to be in this position right now. But the way that they're playing right now, they're a budget team. But Anaheim has $20 million under the cap. They could make 2 or 3 deals, say for example, to add players who are rentals. It wouldn't cost them a ton because it's prorated, and they would improve their chances at taking a run in a what I consider a fairly weak Western Conference.
Yeah.
Other than maybe 2 or 3 teams.
Yeah, so that would be fair. So let's just go and run down the Predator situation. Yeah. So they have Peter Forsberg, who's sitting out there, and I talked to someone who kind of knows what's going on. It wasn't David Poyle, but he's got a good handle on what's going on. And I said, "Well, I'm just assuming you won't trade Peter Forsberg." He said,
not Peter Forsberg.
I'm sorry, it's Philip Forsberg. Philip Forsberg, and he said, "Well, wait a minute." He said, "The last time the Predators went through this with Ryan Suter, they didn't trade him. They stuck with him, hoped that they might sign him, and then he walked, and it set him back 2 or 3 years." And he said that's still fresh in everyone's mind. And they're in the same spot. This is the Michael Agello conundrum, where they end up with 4 guys making $8 or $9 million. And they've got to decide what to do here. Like, they really want to sign keep saying Peter, Philip Forsberg. Philip Forsberg. Why don't I just call him Forsberg?
Yeah, call him Forsberg.
Yeah, Forsberg. And he wants to stay there. Very popular with his teammates. And maybe this is an Ekholm situation where, if you remember what Ekholm says, I've made plenty of money. I don't need more money. I'm just going to stay when I want here. So, But like if you're Forsberg, don't you look at Johansson and Duchesne's contract and say, man, I got to get at least $8 million. I got to get
No,
more.
he definitely is going to do that.
Well,
Yeah,
that echoes the Klingberg situation in Dallas, because they're saying, well, they love Klingberg and they'd love to sign him, but he wants close to what Heiskanen's making, and they're already paying Sagan and Ben over $9 million, so they simply can't afford it, and that's the problem.
Yeah. So anyway,
Nashville a little bit, because I mean the thing about it with me in Nashville is that Forsberg was born and bred Predator, right? So he's been there the whole time, and Klingberg has been there, a lot. I guess
he's been there all the time.
He's been there the whole time too, but where Heiskanen, I think, is arguably a better player than Klingberg.
It's a lot better, yeah.
Right. Forsberg is arguably a better player than Duchesne, or
Forsberg's the best forward on that team.
So Forsberg is not where Klingberg says he wants to get Heiskanen type money. He's really not in that league, where Forsberg is in the league of Duchesne and Johansson.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Forsberg's been there from the beginning, and those guys were brought in. And I think that a lot of Nashville players, because they do take less money to play there, do feel like they are owed a little bit of loyalty, and they expect a little bit of loyalty sometimes. I think that Poile has shown is one of the things that Poile's good at, is he has shown loyalty to people like that.
Well, so we'll go back to the situation. So now, they haven't been able to make any progress. They haven't got it done. I just assumed that if they didn't get it done, they would still keep him anyway. They've been better than anyone expected. They're playing kind of a playoff style. So, maybe they could, do what Montreal did and make a run, so why worry about it?
It'll be an own rental, as they call.
Right. Exactly. That's how I kind of viewed it was going to happen. But I was told that, that's something they'll have to at least think about. Well, the reason why that's important is they have $10 million.
Yeah.
So now, if they keep him, and they can go out and easily get some rentals and suddenly be a better team in the process. Imagine if they went out and got a Pavelski, and added him to that mix as well.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I mean, Dallas is not yet in the playoffs, and they could be out of it by the time that the trade deadline rolls around. So,
don't you think that $10 million they have too is basically earmarked for Forsberg in a lot of ways? Like, a lot of that is like they've kept it available because of that reason. Yeah,
I think so, but it doesn't make it any easier for them to accept the fact that they're going to be spending $37 million on 4 players. So that's.
Well, let me ask you this, Kev and Eck. Does ownership go to David Poile at some point and say, "Hey, we like Forsberg too, but we need some playoff games here"?
Yeah, I mean they got to factor that in. Mike just brought up that the Maple Leafs get $3.5 million. Is that what you said? Or $3 million? Yeah. So say the Nashville is $1.5 million.
Yeah.
If you make the playoffs and you end up with 3 home games. I mean, right now they're at the top of their division. I can't imagine that Colorado's not going to be there at some point, but they could at a minimum have 3. That's $4.5 million. So
yeah. And the other team that, because like I said with Arizona, they're retaining money on Kemper and on Ekman Larson, so they can only do that on one more player. The team that's basically a clean slate is Seattle, and I'm wondering whether Ron Francis will. Okay, are you telling me that he's not going to retain salary to get a return for Giordano? I think definitely he's going to. There are probably a couple other players that other teams would want off of Seattle that I think they probably picked in the expansion draft just to swap them at the deadline. They have the ability to rake in assets that they didn't do during the expansion draft. I would be surprised that Ron Francis isn't going to take advantage of that opportunity, because there are so many teams that are caught up against it at the deadline.
But the Seattle's got all these guys tied up into contracts long term. They'd have to retain it for multiple years, except for Giordano.
Well, yeah, no, they've got. I mean, the guys like guys like Yarncroke, guys like Marcus Johansson, Riley Sheen. I mean, I'm talking German.
But they're not big salaries, though. I think that's what Kevin's getting.
and they're not players that are going to be a difference maker on another team.
Yeah, the only guy who's got a shorter term that I think they would retain on is Donskoy, and Donskoy's somebody that played with Colorado. Maybe if Colorado wants to add to their depth, that they would retain on that one. But the return would have to be good. I mean, that's what Francis is looking to accumulate assets because they're at the bottom of the league where everybody except a few people expected them to be. So it's smart management to at the deadline maximize your ability to rake in assets, and I think he'll do that. But to your point, I'm looking at that cap friendly list, Kev, and there are maybe 3 or 4 teams that have flexibility. Will this lend itself to the hockey deal, to actual deals involving players?
Well, it's going to have to. I mean, you look at Florida and look at Florida and Tampa. Who've been connected to all kinds of players, and take the player off on those teams that you want to take off to make that deal.
It's fascinating how they're connected to against players. Yeah, I mean they're so different, Florida and Tampa, as far as the way they're looking at things, and yet they are both connected. Like I think people think because Bill Zito made a lot of trades early on in his career, he's like a trading guy, and I think he's not that way. I think he made a lot of trades because they were there for him, and they were good spots for him, and he needed to bring in a new culture. But I don't see him as a guy like Tampa that would be adding this like one piece at the deadline all the time. Before you got on, we pointed out that Brisebois is on the record publicly with the Athletic as saying he isn't likely to do much because he likes his team. He's kind of hamstrung and he doesn't have flexibility, and he'd have to actually move people off his team.
I mean, okay, take Vegas as an example. No, we know Pacioretty's out indefinitely with the wrist surgery. But that's probably not going to be a season-ending thing. He'll probably be back at some point. So they're going to have to fit money when Eichel and Pacioretty are both on the roster. If you look at their roster, the guy that makes the most sense, who's an expiring contract, is Riley Smith because he makes $5 million and he's a UFA at the end of the year. But they want Riley Smith for their cup run. So unless he's really one of
the few Vegas Knights, like OG Vegas Knights they have, right? So he's like one of there aren't that many. I mean, he that is one of the issues with that team, right? So I mean they're gonna.
The problem is every team has that. I looked at Carolina last night, and their guy is Niederreiter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but Niederreiter's got 10 goals.
He's got 10 goals.
They need Niederreiter,
and he's a big presence in that.
That's why I think it's a hard thing, Kev. But I know Don Waddell is always in on trades, and so let's say they do want to get Chychrun, they are going to affect their everyday lineup too. It's going to affect the lineup too.
Yeah,
there's no way around it.
And I think if they made the Chychrun deal, I think they would be willing to, they'd have to back a player off their roster.
Yeah.
And I still stick by my belief that I don't think the Coyotes are asking a lot or too much, I should say.
Okay.
They are asking a lot.
Are the Vegas Golden Knights at risk at all of becoming a team of all-stars and not really a team? Like if
they're at risk of that. Yeah,
I mean, like you say, like them play. Say they go up against the Minnesota Wild, for example, in the playoffs. And the Wild are, the Wild I think are really a solid team. They're a team built as a team. They play for each other. A lot of guys have been there, for a while. They're doing their thing.
Even before the Eichel deal, you looked at Vegas and they were extremely top heavy. Where you've got the Pacioretty, you've got Stone, you've got Pietrangelo, you've got Theodore, and now you've got Leonard. And where they're failing is like they're playing guys like Keegan Colasar on the fourth line, and I don't think he's that much. He's an NHLer, but I don't think he contributes a lot. Their depth is not as good as somebody like Minnesota doesn't have the top end guys. They have Kaprizov.
Yeah, they're built a different way.
But their depth throughout the lineup with Foligno and
a lot of continuity.
Right. So
a
I
lot
mean,
of
that's where
continuity,
things fail.
and and like an old school Minnesota hockey fan. I mean, is anything does that make matter? Does it really matter? I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know if it matters. Like
I don't think that matters, but I think
we've
matters
seen
for
teams built
Vegas.
different ways. Like we've seen teams built. If someone in the chat room said Detroit was built like an all-star team at one point, and that's true.
But they still had a lot of continuity too. There were players there that knew each other.
Right. They had like Yzerman and Gallant and certain guys that were there their whole bit.
Yeah, they had some mercenaries that they brought in, but there was a lot of homegrown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they brought in Robitaille and Hall for that one year.
Yeah, like the 03 Devils brought in Nieuwendyk. They did the same thing, but they had the continuity. They still had the continuity of their team.
But those guys are they are your rentals or your short term. Yeah. Because I mean, we're bringing in Eichel and Pietrangelo, and we're talking about like you're bringing in guys that are going to be there for a very long time. And
right, these are long term additions to the.
But I think what Mike said is true. If they go, let's say it goes to be a long series in the first round, and they're going through another long series in the second, and guys start coming in and out of the lineup, they're going to get thin on defense really quick if they have any defensive injuries, as an example.
And they're heavily dependent on Leonard. Like,
yeah.
What's interesting about what you just said, Ek, is, yesterday I was looking at team save percentage, and we climb all over the Edmonton Oilers and the Colorado Avalanche, and saying they're going to have to do something in net, and yet the Vegas Golden Knights team save percentage is right down there with those two.
I know.
Yet they haven't had Leonard has not had one of his better. Seasons. He hasn't saved their bacon as much as he has in the past. And another team that's surprisingly down near that group in terms of team save percentage is Washington Capitals.
I know.
I
wrote an article a couple of days ago about that division, and and about how if there's one team that falls out of the top 8, because I feel like the top 8 is so solid in that division. As far as we all say that it looks like we have our 8 playoff teams. Really, and I've never. Remember, I'm not one to say that. You guys know that. I'm not one to say, that it's over. But in that division, it looks more over than it's ever been. I mean, the 650 or whatever of the Boston Bruins is the worst play. That's crazy.
They're 11 points ahead of the Flyers. 11.
I mean, it's crazy to have an 8th seed at a 650 winning percentage. I mean, that's just insane.
Well, and they're already 7 ahead of Detroit, and they're second.
Right.
And 4 games, 7 ahead with 4 games in hand.
If I could see one team that could fall apart, to me, it would, and it's a long shot, but it would be the Capitals.
Well,
I don't see it. I think everybody is still underestimating the Capitals' defense, how much better it is than seasons past. I think everybody's focusing on the goaltending.
It's young, Russ. It's young. I mean,
it's not all young.
Yeah.
Well,
we just saw the defense.
Breaking.
Just heard Eklund say Washington could fall apart. And Russ makes a declarative say it ain't going to happen.
So, I'm telling you, it's not happening now.
Breaking news here, and of course, Eck will be marching down the street in suburban.
Well, I haven't been here all week guys, because I've been chasing this one. So, Mike, go ahead.
As Funky and a number of people in the chat, the great Alex Stalock has been placed on waivers, and apparently that means that he is ready to return. So he has to clear.
Good. I'm so happy he could return. I'm just happy the guy can play again.
He's not the savior. He's not. Yeah. He's an average backup. He's not.
Well, before he got hurt, he was doing pretty well. That's all we said.
I'm with Russ on this one. It's back to the circus, yes, indeed. But I think that
somebody's going to pick him up. I don't know why Edmonton
is one of those guys that I would definitely pick up.
I'll tell you who will pick him up. And I was going to bring this up because maybe it's just more apparent this year, but it does seem like goaltenders are dropping like flies. I mean, look at the Buffalo.
No, there's no question. It's not seems that it's happening.
Look at the Buffalo Sabres situation. Okay, they're on goalie number 6 and 7 right now. They're like the Flyers the year that Carter Hart got called up. They've lost Craig Anderson.
Yeah.
They've lost Malcolm Subban. They've lost Dustin Tokarski. They've lost Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Now they're on Aaron Dell and Michael Hauser. I'm right. Yeah. I got my pads and I got my pads.
Aaron Dell got a 4-1 win, Mike. I don't know where you're at.
I know. Hey,
they won last night, right?
They did.
Yep, 4-1.
They did.
Yeah. So
Did you? Do you have your Milex ready, Brett? Mike, you got your Milex?
Yeah. I'm ready. I got the as long as the NHL is using the old orange puck, I'm in great shape.
I would
orange
endorse
ball,
Eck as a goalie way before I would endorse Mike, just to be fair.
Yeah, right now. You wouldn't endorse me this week, but yeah, normally
Not this week, but any other time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're smart. I can barely do the splits anymore.
I can still do a split, Mike.
But so I mean, that situation with Buffalo, Arizona has been picking up any goaltender that's on, and I'll bet you Arizona will be the one who picks up Stalock on waivers because they have Wedgwood and Vamelka. I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, hey,
is it possible?
Colorado?
Is it possible that that this is the move that Ken Holland does? That Ken Holland thinks, okay, we're gonna give this guy a shot. Like, I'm having a hard time getting anybody.
I think it's possible. Yes.
Well, yesterday Mike Smith wasn't on the ice, according to Jim Matheson. So maybe this is a.
But the thing is, Kev, with all the goaltender injuries and all the problems, I don't think he gets through waivers. Unless there's some secret agreement that you're gonna let him through. I don't think that
he might not, but he hasn't played. The one thing that's in his favor for getting through waivers is he hasn't played in over a year.
Yeah, I would be really. I'd have a hard time believing he would be picked up. But I don't know. I mean, the awful irony would be if he did get picked up off of waivers and played well for somebody else. Like, that's the last thing.
He's going to need some tuning up. There's no doubt about it.
Thomas said the Devils might claim him because right now they're Bernier's
that's
out
possible.
For the year. There are enough teams out there that need a goaltender.
But the only thing is they want a goalie that they can insert right away. Stalock can't get inserted right away in the NHL. He can't.
He's got to condition something.
He can go down to the AHL on a conditioning stick.
He's got to be in conditioning somehow. Why did they have to put him through waivers at this point, I guess, is the question.
I believe because he was on injured reserve because of COVID, I think. And
it was because of COVID and then the after effects with his heart.
I have one last question for you guys. And this is for Kevin directly, too. I was doing some research today. Now, my blog today is, do you think, and I really would love to talk about what I wrote about yesterday, but we don't have time. That's whether or not, and I'll do this real quickly.
Do it fast. That's fine.
Brad Marchand. Brad Marchand. I wrote yesterday, is he a Hall of Famer or not? And I put this out there, and I put it out there also as a Twitter poll. I got 1,000 responses, and I had four possibilities. Like, you could say it was a first ballot. You could say he's definitely an NHL Hall of Famer. You could say he's not a Hall of Famer, or or you can say he's a bubble Hall of Famer, or there's no way he's in the Hall of Fame. And only 57% of people out there thought he was a Hall of Famer, Brad Marchand.
I think he's
a Hall of Famer, but not first ballot based on who the voters are.
Yeah, I think his antics will hurt him as a first ballot
initially.
Yeah, but Stanley Cup champion. Olympic. I think he was on the 2014 team in Sochi.
Yeah.
He actually doesn't have an Olympic gold when I was doing my research.
He wasn't on the team in Sochi.
No, I was surprised by that.
I thought it was him, Bergeron, and Crosby.
Mike, maybe it's wrong.
Maybe it was 20. Yeah.
I'll check.
Yeah.
I could not.
I know he's got a World Cup gold.
I know he's got a couple. He's going gold for Canada and other places, but he was a big part of that World Cup. When remember he
I think he's certainly a Hall of Famer. I think he's just been too big of a difference maker for too long. His antics, I think Mike's right on. I think people will be kind of offended by that, and they'll make him pay a price and maybe wait. He's scored a lot of goals. He's been a consistent goal scorer. He's played with Bergeron. Success by association
if after Crosby goes in, he would go on a podium and say Marchand should be in. Crosby would say it.
Right?
Yeah. I wrote that as part of the
no Olympic gold, but the World Cup gold in 2016.
Okay.
So.
It's surprising that he doesn't have Olympic gold.
But he has been an Olympian.
He has, but he hasn't won gold.
Because he played on Crosby's line. We were all surprised.
He solved that question. That was such a big question. Like, who could play with Crosby? He actually brought Crosby, but yet he doesn't get the Olympic gold. It's kind of weird. All right. So
he's just such a disliked.
Person, but he's an unbelievable. I mean, the fact he's getting better still. Like he's 33, and we always say like, oh, a guy like that's got a lot of years on him, you know, because he just plays a rough game. So at 33, he should be bearing down. He's improving every year.
Yeah, but the
points per game are better every year.
The key is that he hasn't lost his speed. Like a guy like Brendan Gallagher, who's around the same age, he's losing his speed. And
it's more than that, though. It's instincts. His instincts are ridiculous.
No, I'm obviously Marchand is a better. Brendan Gallagher's not a Hall of Famer, never will be, and Marchand is. But what I'm saying is, I think Marchand has better instincts, as you say. But
he's got two crazy records for the Boston Bruins. I found out yesterday.
Yeah.
One, he's got the most overtime goals in Boston Bruin history. This is the Boston Bruins. This is the original 6 team. All right, he's got the most. This is the Cam Neely, Phyllis, Esposito. This is a team. Patrice Bergeron. This is a team. And he also has the most shorthanded goals in Boston Bruin history, which is really that's another. When you have the most shorthanded goals, that's
I think that's a function of Bergeron, though. I do, because Bergeron's the guy passing it to him.
Probably. Yeah, because they're one of the few teams who will put out their 2 best players on their first penalty kill. It's always Bergeron and Marchand. There's a reason why they're 22, 23, 24 minutes a night, because they play number 1 power play, number 1 penalty kill, and first line.
Yeah, I do.
How many players do that?
Plus Marchand has averaged over. This will be the 7th season in a row where he's averaged over 30 goals.
Over the last 4 years, only Draisaitl and McDavid have more points than Marchand. It's like, and that's a crazy stat too. Like, and that's something you would never think. The last thing is this: the NHL All-Star Game. We're getting the All-Star teams announced now. Of course, we're getting all that. We have this last man thing that they're doing, which is fun. But is it going to happen? Like the NHL, I think, is enjoying all this.
I believe it's going to happen. I do.
All this publicity.
Let's ask the two
questions. Is it going to happen? Should it happen?
Right. That's what I was. Is it going to happen? Yes. Should it happen? Hell no. But it's going to.
Yeah, I'm going to vote 1 and 2 also. Yeah. Yes and no.
Yeah, well, it is going to happen, and probably it has to happen. There's just too much at stake. So
yeah.
What's at stake, really, Kev? What's at stake?
Money, a lot of money.
Yeah.
Money
and promotion and I know at the end, I know the All-Star Game is when they bring all the sponsors out and they show them a good time.
Yeah. I believe it's on ESPN, right? It's not a TNT game. It's on ESPN. ESPN on SportsCenter had the announcement of the All-Star Game. So this is a signature event for them, and they're not going to go against one of their rights holders. So,
but here's the big question, though: how many days off do the players have after the All-Star Game before the season resumes? Is it 2?
2.
So if you were to be stuck in Vegas in protocol, you're going to miss 1 or 2 games probably.
Right. Yeah. If the player says I'm not going, which we haven't heard yet, but I'm sure there'll probably be a couple that do. The rule is they miss a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. So, but I'm saying if they went and they played and they tested positive and had to stay in Vegas, they're going to miss 1 or 2 games.
Right. 5 days, at least 5 days. Yeah.
So, okay. So before we get out of here, the last thing is this, Russ. I've been hung up in bed because of shingles. It's been sucky. It's on my whole right side of my body. It's just burning.
I had it on my shoulder. It was like a big bubble on my shoulder.
I had one last time. I had one place too. This time
I'm getting the Shingrix tomorrow.
I've gotten vaccinated, Mike, but still, it's my whole right side of my body is burning like a mother right now. But anyway, that's why it's hard to even sit here and talk. But one of the things I've been doing while I've been in bed is catching up on really bad TV, and I found this show. And I looked it up online, and I'm like, "This is weird. It's a weird show. Is it a really bizarre show?" And I find a review from Sportsology of this show, and I was just shocked beyond belief.
I do entertainment. I interview actresses and actors.
Dating Unfiltered. That you reviewed Dating Unfiltered.
Yep, I did.
Which I find to be maybe the funniest show I've ever watched.
It actually was good. Okay, just so Mike understands what happens here. Because I have an entertainment function on the website and I am in touch with a lot of PR people, I get a lot of things in my inbox. Yeah. And if something interests me where I think it could get a decent amount of hits or be an interesting interview, I do it. And so they gave me screeners of that show before it came out. And I was watching it with my wife and I'm like, this is unbelievable what they're doing on this.
This show It's on Hulu. If you have Hulu, it's free on Hulu.
I'm just trying to get my mind around what Eck just said. That's like Mary Tyler Moore, The Honeymooners, MASH, Barney Miller, and Dating Unfiltered. Oh my friggin' God.
Dating Unfiltered is absolutely, if you want to watch something with your wife and just like laugh and laugh and laugh, it is
It's funny.
The comedians on it's basically they set up people on blind dates. And like all different kinds of people, all different dates.
And these dates are not scripted. Like, trust me, these are not
at all. And they have 6
None of
comedians.
mine are either.
Basically have 6 comedians kind of like Mystery Science Theatering it, where they're like, but they go back to the comedians, like they break. If someone says something stupid, they go back to the comedians and they like comment on it. This show will have you rolling.
I wish some of my dates had been scripted.
It is funny. I can endorse it. X right. It is funny.
And Russ, I know you're not like I've talked about reality shows before, and you've mocked me. So when I
watched like one reality show.
I know. So when I saw that, when I looked it up to see if there was a 3rd season of this, and your name came up, I was like, "What the heck?" All right. Anyway,
Mike Jello and Love Island.
That would be the equivalent of this.
Yeah.
Kevin Allen's review of the Bachelor in Paradise series.
All right.
All right.
A guy's got to do what a guy's got to do.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for covering for me this week. I owe you big time. And thanks everybody for watching the show. We'll be back on Monday. I will be back on Monday. I've got enough steroids in me to sterilize a mule. I guess they already are sterilized, aren't they? Anyway, whatever I'm trying to say. I'll be back on Monday. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.